Good evening, I'm Jose Cardenas. Find out about a group of parents working together to help children with learning disabilities, plus the creative impulse of artists searching for an identity through their music, and where you can watch a play based on the memoirs of Daniel Hernandez, the intern who was first to reach Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords when she was shot. All this coming up straight ahead on Horizonte.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station.
Parents Education Network, known as PEN, is a coalition of parents working with educators and the community to help bring success to students with learning disabilities. Joining me to talk about the organization are Julie Erfle, Treasurer, and Linda Parkes, Secretary. Both are with the Parents Education Network Phoenix affiliate. Thank you both for joining us on Horizonte to talk about PEN. As I understand it, it's a national organization based out of San Francisco. Tell me a little bit about the organization.
So that organization was started much the same way we started our affiliate. It was a group of moms who had children with learning and attention differences, and they found the road to be very frustrating, very lonely, not a lot of great, credible information out there. And they got together and they decided, you know, we need to do something more. We need to educate the community. We need to collaborate with our teachers. We need to help students. We need to empower them to be able to speak up for themselves and really use their strengths to move forward. And so it's a fantastic organization. That organization has been going for 10 years, and we are excited to be one of their first affiliates.
You know, Linda, I think people would be surprised to know that there's a need for more information on this, because you hear about this all the time, and you hear stories about people who had learning disabilities and have dealt with them, have overcome that disadvantage, and yet, you know, we were talking off screen about all the misinformation that's out there. How is that?
There's absolutely a lot of misinformation. I think there's also a problem with misidentification. And even though the schools are required to deal with this on an individualized basis, sometimes parents don't even know what they're looking for. They don't know that their child has an issue. It might be overlooked as misbehavior. It might be overlooked as just really being difficult or not. You may not realize that it's an attention difference or that it's a learning difference. And our goal is to really bring some of the research-based information to parents and to educators, and to really create a collaboration between the two, and basically get the information out so these students can be better identified and the parents have resources to look to.
So how are we doing in Phoenix overall in this area? I
think it varies across the board. It really depends on where you're at. It depends on what resources are available to you. We have some great private schools in the Scottsdale area that have worked with learning differences and are available, and we actually have some great public schools that do great jobs with these different types of students. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you may not know that your child has an issue. We really are trying to bring the information to all different communities. We're trying to spread the word. We're trying to get a lot of this research to the parents so they know what some of the best approaches are. They know what some of the newest information is. And we've done that primarily this year. We're starting out with a great speaker series, so we're bringing some experts who have really looked into the different areas and have some expertise in things like dyslexia or attention deficit disorders and things that tend to be pretty common with some of our children.
And Julie, I understand the first event you had was in August.
Correct.
It's one of those speaker series that Linda was talking about. How does such a small organization as yours get the word out to, Phoenix is a big city, we're several million people, hundreds of thousands of school children. What are you doing?
Well, we're starting with organizations like yours with this. This is very helpful to us, of course. We are on social media, so you can find us, of course, on Facebook at PEN Phoenix, as well as Twitter at PEN Phoenix. We are trying to work with schools. We will shortly have what we're calling our school advocates that will go into schools to try and spread the information about the speaker series, as well as continuing education for teachers. We are starting out much the same way the national organization started out. A lot of it is word of mouth. A lot of it is being spread through people who come to the events. They find out about it. You know, they tell other people who are in the same situation. And then, of course, we rely on the media as well to help spread the message.
And what is the message?
The message is that there's hope out there, and that if you have a child who has a learning or attention difference, it's not because they're lazy, it's not because they have a low IQ, it's not the end of the world. It's really you know, they have so much to offer. They have all of these great strengths. And if you learn how to tap into those strengths and you learn how to approach your child and learn how to approach the school in a collaborative message that really drills into what the child can do, focusing on those strengths, then you have a much different approach, a much different outlook on where you're going moving forward.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to remember that a lot of these kids are not just faced with dyslexia or not just faced with ADHD or some other learning difference. They actually are quite bright. There's a large percentage of these children who are called twice exceptional, and that means that they're gifted and that they may have a deficit somewhere else. And unfortunately, one may mask the other. And to truly play into the strengths of that child, you need to recognize both the giftedness and the deficit. And that's really hard to do. And that's one of the goals we're also trying to do, is to reach the twice exceptional community, because I think it's even harder when you have this child that has a little bit of both to know how to approach your child's education.
And what kind of reception are you getting from the schools?
We're very new, so we're getting the message out to the schools. Most of the reception we've had has been quite positive. It's something that I think we're working with the schools, we're working with educators. So I think everybody is working towards the same goal, and we're really trying to bring, again, research-backed information into the schools and create an environment of collaboration. So for the most part, it's been very positive.
Now, what about the Hispanic community? Are there special outreach efforts there?
We definitely, that's one of our real goals, because this is a problem that affects everybody. The statistics are 1 in 5, that's 20% of our community, and that doesn't matter where you come from, where you're born, what language you speak. It's across the board, and it's something that everyone needs to learn to recognize. And so what we're trying to do at, for instance, our next event is Ben Foss, who's a well-known dyslexia advocate, is actually going to be translated, so it will be presented both in Spanish and English, and we're going to try to do that moving forward in all of our events so that it's available to the
And Julie, that event's coming up at the end of September, is that right?
Yes, September 30th, which will help kick off Dyslexia Awareness Month, which is the month of October.
Is there any charge for people to go?
There is a small charge. However, if that provides an issue for any family, we will waive that charge. And they can find that on the website as well.
And last question, how do people get involved if they want to support your efforts?
Come to the website, penn-phoenix.org, sign up, be a member, volunteer. Of course, we are looking for donations as well. We are an all-volunteer board, all-volunteer organization, and so all of the money that we raise will go back into the programming that we provide, such as the speaker series, such as the Safe Group for teens, such as the continuing education classes for teachers.
Well, best of luck to both of you in your efforts, and good luck on the event in September. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
The U.S.-Mexico border can be a contentious space shaped by the contrasting forces of two cultures rubbing shoulders. It's also a place that fuels the creative impulse of artists searching for an identity, as is the case with the music of Nortec Collective. AZPM's Luis Carrion reports on what makes the music unique.
The music of Nortec Collective was born out of the border dynamic of Tijuana. This group of musicians and artists is known for blending the traditional norteño style with electronic club beats.
It really became a federation, if we can call it, of DJs and VJs that began playing and experimenting with electronic music.
Javier Duran is professor of Spanish and Border Studies at the University of Arizona. He's also director of the Confluence Center for Creative Inquiry. He says Nortec Collective offers an interesting example of the blending of cultures along the border.
From my perspective, what I'm interested in is to see how they negotiate the contradictions that we find in border regions, and especially in a place like Tijuana.
This is Tijuana. This is Tijuana. This is Tijuana.
I mean, the coexistence of contradictory societal aspects related to violence, migration, even our own perspective from the U.S. to secure the border is part of the conversation.
The conversation being had here, says Duran, is one that includes the topics that are relevant to the communities that live at the point of contact between two countries. A point of contact that creates tension, which translates into the sound of Nortec Collective.
They started sharing sounds, music, also they start playing locally to wider audiences, And they supported each other with the local artists in terms of the graphic design. They were sort of part of what we can call a rave culture back in the day. And so that idea of being underground sort of remained part of this mystique, that they were locally grounded, they were locally produced, and at the same time they were reaching our audiences, especially in California and Europe. So it's an interesting mix of folks working along the lines of Norte, besides the actual musicians.
Indeed, Nortec Collective is much more than a sound. And it's been said that if music is the soul of Nortec, then art and design are the heart and mind behind the movement.
A big thing with the Nortec is the visuals.
Omar Pimienta is an interdisciplinary artist, a VJ, and writer who lives and works in the Tijuana border region. He says Norte Collective was part of a border aesthetic that gave voice to the bicultural experience of people living in Tijuana.
And most of it is pretty much bringing in lower base community elements, taxis, the donkey, stuff that people weren't really proud of in Tijuana. It obviously made young creative people think about their city in a more critical way, and it gave them pride and tools to, I guess, unify more their creative process.
Pimienta says the melding of creative sensibilities created tension. Traditional music genres being mixed with an invasive pop music sensibility did rub some people the wrong way at first, he says.
It took relatively short time for everybody to figure out that this was an honest attempt and that it made sense, and it wasn't a mockery, it was simply appropriation, and everybody, yeah, I could probably say everybody jumped into the wagon pretty much.
The U.S.-Mexico border is a place where asymmetry and tension seem to define identity, says Duran. And Norte Collective provides a window into how a new border culture evolves.
What I find interesting is the possibility of negotiation between the local and the global, and what place the border has in this conversation.
Duran says the conversation about the border involves many issues that change over time, and Norte Collective is only one voice in a complex dialogue.
Now, it would be naive to think that this sort of autotopia that is Norte in some ways would provide concrete solutions to some of the issues, but it does provide a venue to better rethink what's being produced at the local level in our border communities on both sides, and what are some of the things that we can engage a younger generation to rethink the ways that we're talking about the border and how we're dealing or managing the border, so to speak.
Borderlands Theater starts its 29th season with the world premiere of They Call Me a Hero by playwright Guillermo Reyes, based on Danielle Hernandez's memoir. Hernandez is credited with responding first and helping save her life when Congressman Gabriel Giffords was shot in 2011. Here to talk about the play is Guillermo Reyes, playwright, and also here is Danielle Hernandez. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us on
Thanks for having us.
Horizonte. It was an awful moment that started, about 3 years ago? And that's how the play starts.
Yes, it starts off with a reenactment of those events. 7 actors play the various characters, including Daniel, and how they go about it step by step in that particular moment that seems to stop time. It's a very dramatic moment. It's painful, but then we get into the life of the character of Daniel, the main character, and then we see how this moment came to be. That's basically what the play is. It's a reenactment of the events, and then a reenactment of the young Daniel's life, and we get back to the present, to the actual events of the shooting.
Daniel, I know you've seen some of the rehearsals.
Yeah.
What did it feel like the first time you saw the reenactment of the shooting?
you know, it was really difficult at first to kind of see this again. And obviously the set design wasn't there because it was just a reading that I've seen. But I think it brought back a lot of emotions, remembering what happened on January 8th, which was a really difficult day, not just for me, but for everyone in Arizona, and especially those of us in Southern Arizona. You know, it was 5 days into my congressional internship in the office of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords when Jared Loughner, a young man who was only about 6 months older than I was at the time, ended up coming to this constituent event, and 10 minutes into it, ended up in less than 90 seconds firing enough rounds to kill 6 people and injure 13 others. So for me, it was a really difficult thing, and I was there with one of my good friends who used to work in the office of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, Pam Simon, who's a survivor who was actually shot on the 8th. And it was a little tense at times, especially when we played some clips of things that had happened in Tucson after talking about the shooting, but also hearing some of those 911 tapes briefly, I think is something that is always kind of jarring to anyone that was on the scene, to see, you know, some of the audio that was, you know, of people in the background saying, you know, this person's been injured, that person's been shot. So it was difficult for Pam and myself to listen to it the first time, but I think it's an important thing to talk about. And as time has gone on, it's gotten a little bit more easy, not easy, but it's become a little bit easier to discuss some of the incidents that happened, including, you know, the 9-year-old girl who was there on January 8th who was murdered.
Guillermo, so the play includes some clips, some actual audio clips?
Well, I took some quotes from some of the broadcasts that happened on that day. I'm thinking of newscasts where they interrupt a certain program to give us an update on Gabby Giffords. The most dramatic one was CNN announcing that she had been killed, for instance, and then having to take it back. I included things like that because I felt I wanted us to feel that we are there and that we are witnessing the events as they are happening. And so that was an important part of the play, to reenact what we all felt that day. I remember that day particularly. And so that was that was actually one of the things that I wanted to do in writing the play, is to do a docudrama basically, and to find a way to reenact these events and then put them in perspective. Now, I didn't know how to start the play because there's so much involved in this, but when I read Daniel's book, I found that I had the focus.
Had you been thinking of doing this even before you read the book?
Yeah, my mind thinks dramatically, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but when something like this happens...
Playwright, I think it's good.
My mind immediately, I said I wanted to see how I could reenact this because it was such a dramatic event. But then I was stuck, so the only way to find my way through that, through the emotions and the drama of it, was to find a focus, and I couldn't find it until I read the book. I found that that's the story that I think helps me dramatize the entire events. Because
so you're telling the story from Daniel's perspective.
Yes.
How much of it, whether it's from Daniel's perspective or otherwise, deals with the aftermath of the shooting and the debate that ensued regarding guns and what we do with mentally disturbed individuals?
Sure, the aftermath is also a very important part of it. In the book itself, Daniel deals with how he is dealing with the aftermath, particularly how people are reacting to his, well, I want to use the word heroism, but I know you're ambivalent about that word, his actions that helped save Gabby Giffords' life. And then the various postings that people put on the internet, all those things. But also, I also wanted to deal with Gabby's recovery and her very painful step-by-step process of recovery. I thought that was an important part of the aftermath as well. And then some of the aspects of Jared Loughner's mental instability and how that contributed to his getting a hold of guns, and that brings up the issue of guns. I don't think I go into a deep debate on gun ownership.
And to Guillermo's credit, I think that was kind of by design, because the book itself is not about gun violence. It's not about, you know, how can we change some of these laws to prevent people from having access to guns. The book was written about public service, where we used the shooting as an anchor to talk about the importance of people getting involved in their communities, especially young people. So to Guillermo's credit, it's not that he didn't include it because I didn't give him the material. because we wanted to make sure that the book wasn't pigeonholed as an anti-gun book. And I think immediately after the shooting, there was a lot of hesitation on my part and in the part of Congresswoman Giffords to really wait to talk about the issue of gun violence, to be better informed about the issue and not be reactionary. So it wasn't until 2 years later when Sandy Hook happened that I even started getting involved in the issue of gun violence prevention. And I know that the same is true of Congresswoman Giffords and Mark Kelly. They formed an organization after Sandy Hook. So there was a lot of hesitation by those of us that were directly involved to talk about the importance of some of these reforms that needed to be done, because we didn't want to politicize what had happened in Tucson. And then we realized how awful this issue of gun violence really was, with over 80 Americans being affected by it each and every single day.
So if the message of the book, though, is about the importance of public service, how do you convey that coming out of a tragic event like this?
You know, we start with the shooting, both in the play and in the book, but we go back to my childhood growing up in Tucson in southern Arizona, talking about some of the challenges that I had and really having to overcome things like in 2000, the state of Arizona banning bilingual education, which was a big challenge for me. Then when I was 17, being diagnosed with Graves' disease and becoming very ill and almost failing out of all my classes. And in spite of all of the challenges that I had, my desire to help other people really driving me to get involved first in healthcare and eventually in politics, which I think was one of the things that Guillermo really highlighted in the book, that regardless of what you want to do and how you want to get involved, each of us has a pathway that we can help other people, not necessarily saving lives, but we can do things to help our communities, whether that's through art, music, or teaching. You know, all of us have our own path that we need to find to public service, and there's not a guide that says this is considered public service and this isn't. But that's one of the things that I think was really important to highlight, both in the play and in the book, that we all have things that we can contribute to society, and they may not be big things, they may not be things that affect a lot of people, but we can all in our own way do something to help change and improve our community.
Guillermo, you said at the beginning of the interview that you think dramatically. Your play starts with one of the most dramatic moments in American history. How do you maintain that and talk in an effective way about some of the things that Daniel just described in terms of his upbringing and the challenges he's faced?
Well, fortunately, the book gives me that guidance, because I felt that once we have such a big public event, we need to slow down and then go back into childhood, go back into memory, and seeing how this young man grew up. And I think all those family stories are important to dramatize, because it gives us a more intimate sense of what happened here. So I feel that the story, even though it's a big public event, it's also very intimate. It is about family life, and it goes into public service, as Daniel says, but I also feel that the family story helps us digest all these things and helps us put it into perspective. In that sense, it's a form of growing up in Tucson type of story that then gets, in which a young man then gets thrown into the limelight. And it's a local story, but it's also a national event. And so I think that the two things are a part of that.
Daniel, let's talk about that family story. In the introduction, I should have mentioned that you're Daniel Hernandez Jr., so your father is Daniel Hernandez. Talk about your father and mother and your upbringing in Tucson.
Well, my mom is from Nogales, Sonora. And she actually met my dad a few years before they had me, and they got married after they met at a family event. But it was funny because when my mom and dad met, they didn't speak the same language. My mother was only Spanish and my father was only English, but because my father wanted to pursue a relationship with her, he started learning Spanish in his late 30s, early 40s. So he is what he's jokingly called a redneck from California. Even though he's Latino, he grew up a bunch of farm workers and a bunch of other folks that owned their own little plots of land. So he grew up in Van Nuys, and they both were excited to find a new place to call home, and that happened to be Tucson. And I've been very fortunate to have two younger sisters, Alma and Consuelo, and to grow up in such a great place, which is the Old Pueblo down in Tucson. Was there anything else that you specifically wanted me to?
You know, a part of your story that came out, especially when you attract all this attention, is the fact that you're gay. What was it like growing up gay in a Latino neighborhood in Tucson?
You know, it's one of those things that we talk about in the book, and I think in the play is mentioned briefly, where from a very young age, I was very adamant about usage of words and how they could hurt other people. And there was an incident that I remember where one of my cousins said, you know, that's so gay. And I came back with a retort of, well, books don't have a sexual preference. They don't have an orientation. And I think it was difficult because there was a lot of teasing that happened when I was growing up. And it really came to a head when I was in college, and I got to see that there was other people who didn't have a supportive family like I did, and that I was very fortunate.
This is all captured, from what I understand, in the play. I urge everybody to see it because we're out of time right now. We can't talk about it any further here, but it airs again. It starts
on the 27th, September 27th, in Tucson at Borderlands Theater.
Very good. And that's our show for tonight. From all of us here at Horizonte and 8, I'm Jose Cardenas. Have a good evening.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station.